what the heck or what the something is an SSA? I'm Ruth Sheehan.
And I'm Danielle Tully.
And we're putting the real in real estate. So this is a topic that you could go your whole life and never have to worry about.
Lucky you.
But if it touches you, it can touch you big time. So
Yes.
It's something that you need to be aware of if you are a home buyer or if you're a home seller in an area that has one.
Yes. So if you've heard of an SSA or an SAD or an SAA, lots of acronyms for it, it's essentially a special service area. And if you've heard of it, chances are you live in a neighborhood or live in an area that had some construction done in the mid 2000s, because that is the prime of this trend of these special service districts. About mid 2000s, 2003, 4, 5, things like that, right before the bubble.
15, 20 years. Yeah.
And it contributed. It contributed to some of those neighborhoods were the ones that were hit the hardest, because essentially what it is it's a taxation. We'll go into we'll go into it a little bit, but it's a taxation. And what happens when you're buying a house, especially new construction, would be you know what your base is, and you know what your insurance is going to be, and you're not real sure what the taxes are going to be. Taxes come in arrears in Illinois. So we find out after the valuation, so about a year after. Well,
sometimes two, because the first year they're looking back over that year, and that might have still been an empty lot for most of the year.
Correct. So it is, people are often caught off guard a little bit. But then when you have this SSA added to it, people really weren't expecting it and didn't understand it. And that, in addition to, a lot of people had variable loans after a certain amount of time. So their variable rates are going up. So it was a disaster. And that is part of what helped, really.
And in 2005, everyone was just like, where do I sign? But correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to say, as we discussed, this is an instrument available to municipalities always and forever. And even if you don't have one now, that doesn't mean that someday it doesn't get instituted.
Correct.
But during this time, builders of new homes found a way to exploit it to look like they were selling less expensive homes. So the builder had to go in and put in sewers, water, connect to all of the city services.
They had to be developers as well.
Yes. And
builders.
And then rather than tacking that onto the price of the houses, they put it into this instrument as a separate special tax. So it added often $10,000 or $20,000, sometimes more, to the price of the house, but in a sneaky way.
Correct. And they had to go, they had to sell it to whatever the municipality is, was it a city, a township, whatever, and had to tell them all the benefits of this, because it's technically a tax from your local government that are added to it, because one of their stipulations was, hey, yeah, it has to be into our sewer systems, and it has to have drainage, and it has to be, X, Y, and Z water systems. And that's costly. And so they said, well, instead of us paying you, how about we add that? That's something you can get from the homeowners over the course of however many years. So that's.
And I'm sure they made it more. So I'm sure they got more money doing it that way.
Well, I mean, one way or another, it's handled by a law firm elsewhere. So you have the attorney fees, plus it's financed. So you are paying some sort of percentage, for, borrowing money, basically. And I know for a fact that there has been, at least where I'm at, there has been a renegotiation of the interest rates over this time period, because obviously, interest rates were lower than it was in 2005, in 2006. So luckily there has been, but who knows if every municipality or SSA places, thought that far ahead. And they're paid different ways. Usually they're paid within the taxes. So again, in Plano, ours is within our tax bill. It is a line item on our tax bill that you see, and it's paid twice a year in payments. There are other neighborhoods that do this that have it once a year elsewhere. So it is a check that you sign and send off in January for your previous year. So that is kind of the area that we hear about it most. Some people were able to put it in their, they decided not to defer it. They understood, and they put it as part of their mortgage. And so not every, you kind of have to look, because not every home in a neighborhood is definitely going to have it. Some have prepaid it, some paid it off at a sale. So just because a neighborhood tends to have one doesn't mean every house on there is going to have it.
And they can vary in how much they are too.
Correct. It was
quite a bit.
It was usually based on the size of the house. So, a small duplex or a smaller ranch, they're, depending on what it is, might be $1,000 a year, opposed to a 4,000 square foot house where it might be $3,000 a year for 30 years. So again, it's just something to be aware of. It's not necessarily, anything that it does add to the tax. And if there's anything we know about the state of Illinois is there is, hi, Nicole.
You can go back and watch it. It was excellent. You missed the best 3 minutes on Facebook this week.
So, it is good to know, you can find out what the payoff amount is. In the state of Illinois, really our affordability often relies on taxes too. I really, really wish that, it wasn't such a big chunk, but it is. And then when you're talking about an area that has a special service assessment, that still is ongoing for quite a bit of time, it can really make or break your ability to pay for something. You might be able to afford $300,000 in this neighborhood, but not this neighborhood because there's an extra $2,000 tax or $3,000 tax on it. So it is a concern in that regard. But what I think a lot of people don't know about these is that this is not only when set up building. So Ruth has had to sell houses that have dormant SSAs. So again, this is something that a municipality, whatever it is, might be able to put on an area due to something going on in that area that is specific only to them. So what was your instance where you guys had?
So it was a community in North Aurora. And it was one of many communities that experienced this. It was a multi-phase plan that only a portion was completed before the crash came. So whether they saw the writing on the wall or had some other reason, the specific reason for this SSA was for maintenance, not for the infrastructure. So the infrastructure had been paid for, probably in the price of the dwellings. But there was a requirement for maintenance of those streets and sewers and garbage, et cetera. And the municipality was concerned that that if the builder and the HOA did not step up to take care of that responsibility, they would have to step in. And so they built that in. So if they have to step in, then this SSA gets levied.
And that's great, because that's exactly where my next point was going to be, that you have to understand that it's the protection of a municipality for having to take over something. So this kind of goes into last week's conversation about an HOA, and some people have very negative connotations about an HOA. But in reality, some HOAs are covering things that the towns or the cities will not. So for instance, I guarantee if my HOA goes away, the town is going to come in and say, okay, well, now you have to pay XYZ, possibly in an SSA, because we have pools. We have, either they're going to shut down the pools, but if they have maintenance,
even things like street lights or snow plowing, if you're within the city limits.
Yes, again, based on what the HOA covers. If now suddenly there's no HOA to cover it, the city is not expecting these fees and now has to get this money somehow. And often SSAs, SSDs, special service districts, it's usually a specific area. It's not the entire town. It's, again, you were supposed to be paying for streets. Now you're not. And now the streets need to be done.
Right.
We need to tax you.
Yes.
So it is something that is on our contracts. So hopefully, if it was not expressed on the listing, or it was something new that was not known for a neighborhood, or it's something upcoming, both of those items are supposed to be expressed on our sales contracts. So hopefully it will be something that you are, if you're going to purchase, something that you are aware of. It's great if you're, buying something, and if they can give you that information about the payoff amount and how much more time is there, or if there is one pending, get all the details for somebody who's interested in that town, that neighborhood, that area, that particular house. And so hopefully you're not caught off guard.
Yeah. So Nicole asked the question, there's no HOA in Brookdale. Could an SSA show up here? So probably not. The only things I can think of that might be handled currently by the community that in, absentia or whatever, the municipality. So Brookdale is part of Naperville. It's part of the city. And so your taxes go toward typical city services. That's budgeted. That was expected.
Correct.
But you have a couple of things. So what comes to my mind is the entrance area. You have the big Brookdale sign. And there's a little bit of, grass maintenance or flowers, et cetera. It is our own city. That is something that could otherwise fall to the care of the city, and they might charge you for. That's a tiny thing. And probably a neighbor's got a cordless weed whacker and we'll just walk over there and do it. But that's the kind of thing in some areas during and after the crash where everything fell into disrepair, and those common pieces weren't being maintained. Those are where sometimes SSAs were activated where they hadn't been before.
Correct. It also could be for if there's an unincorporated area that has decided they want to get into the sewer system. They want to stay on, there's some public works type of thing that they're hoping to now get that.
They bring water out to an area that had wells, and you can tie in, but
Correct.
You can tie in sometimes with one lump payment, or it could be an SSA imposed on the entire area if they decide this isn't something we're going to let people choose.
Correct. And in the city, there's revamping districts that happen all the time, where it's old dilapidated area of the city. And I'm talking about like the city of Chicago, like a large one, where there is, dilapidated areas, and they're trying to reestablish it. And put in, the city is trying to put in things to get it up to date. And sometimes that is a special service district.
Sometimes it's a retail it's a retail tax reallocation.
Correct.
Instead of a new collection. And that, that block 37 or whatever in the city was famously one of those. And I know when I was in Blue Island, they just instituted one around the hospital that is no longer a hospital.
Yes.
So those were earmarked for improvements in that area. Most of the time, it has to do with a specific area where what they need or want isn't going to necessarily benefit the whole rest of the city.
Correct.
So rather than levying one tax overall
Correct.
or raising taxes to fit that budget, they'll just tax the people who are most impacted by it.
Absolutely. Yes. So it's not the end of the world. I know a lot. I don't want an SSA. I don't want an SSA. And I don't know if people totally understand that. They have just heard stay away from it, not realizing it. And again, if it's something that's, it's nobody wants to be part of one. Nobody wants to be paying extra taxes on something that, other people didn't need to pay extra for, or, it was explained in just normal. It wasn't an oddity like a lot of the mid-2000 things were.
But you probably want streets. You probably want sewers.
Yeah, you want lights.
Discussing.
Yes, exactly. So it was necessary one way or another. People are paying for it one way or another. Yes, would have been nice to, for it was going to go on the house. If your house was 300,000 or 340, at that time, it was going to get paid one way or another over a 30-year period.
And really, my impression of it is that the builders looked and they said, we can charge 300 and yeah, right. Nicole, who needs sewers? Like, you got a bucket. So builders looked and they said, we can sell this house for $350,000, or we can sell it for $350,000 and they have to pay another $10,000 somewhere else. So they took option B.
Yes, of course. Yes. So, so that's a little bit about a special service assessment. You should not get caught off guard in purchasing one these days, because it is part of our contract. That's not something that's always been there. I think it got on the last time we updated, which
with the last
goes by.
version.
So that's 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 8, who knows, but
you might have a seller that doesn't know. So if that listing agent is not doing their due diligence and making sure that an SSA doesn't or does exist and detailing it, then your buyer's agent is going to need to double check. So especially if you are buying a home built in one of the time frames that we're talking about, you want to just double check, and then you just budget for it. You just put it into the whole lump sum and say, this is what I'm going to be paying monthly. Am I okay with that? So
it should also be in the MLS as well. So one way or another, again, if it's something that's part of the taxes, if it's being reported correctly, it will check off on our MLS that there is a special assessment or a special service area and how often it gets paid. But at the very, very least, the tax number should be correct if it's included in the taxes.
Yeah, and I just will say that the time that it was dormant, it was not showing up. So I had to do a lot of research when my clients bought that property, and then when we sold it, make sure that it was disclosed. And there were several other properties in that neighborhood that had no mention of it. So people didn't know. And it was zero, and it wasn't adding any money, but it could. So
all right.
We just like people to know things that are going on with their purchase.
Absolutely. Because it is important. It is important to know everything as much as you can. So, all right. Well, that was another Keeping Real in Real Estate on WTH is SSA. And hopefully we taught you something.
And we'll have another acronym for next week.
Yes, we will.
I kind of like this WTH series.
Yeah, I like it too, because it helps explain things. But that's what we're here for, right? Explaining things. So. Exactly. All right. Have a great weekend, everybody. Right. We'll see you next week.
See ya. Stay out of the rain today. What month is it? March showers?
April showers. Bring May flowers. We're not even there yet. We're mid-March.
But at least it's not snow.
Hey, yesterday was beautiful. So I'll go with
that. I'll take that sneak peek.
Absolutely.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.